We're kicking off today with Raw, as this week's show went off the air with the announcement of Randy Orton for Survivor Series, but the Viper's allies had some fun once the cameras stopped rolling. After the show went off the air, Cody Rhodes played to the crowd and heard the fans yelling "Yeet," which led to Rhodes encouraging Jey Uso to give his signature catchphrase with gusto. Once he did, Rhodes thanked the fans attending the show and made it clear he would see them next time, ending a packed go-home Raw before this Saturday's Survivor Series. As we reported yesterday, MJF suffered a hip injury during his AEW Full Gear match with Jay White, and that he won't be competing for the foreseeable future. Despite this, MJF will still be appearing on AEW programming, but in a non-competitive role, and isn't expected to miss much ring time. On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was noted that while MJF is in a lot of pain due to his injury, he's expected to make a full recovery in time for the World's End pay-per-view on December 30th. That show will take place in MJF's native Long Island, so it's good that he should be ready for that match. And who do you hope to see step into the ring with the champ on December 30th? Over to NXT now, as Chad Gable challenged Noam Dar for the Heritage Cup this week, and after a back and forth in the rounds, Gable made Dar tap out in clear view of the referee. Unfortunately for Gable, the tap happened after the timer expired, and with the scores being 1-1, the cup did not change hands. Following that match, Oro Mensah and Otis had an altercation in the ring, meaning that this rivalry is far from over. NXT also saw Dirty Dominik Mysterio continue his feud with Wes Lee, and Lee will earn a title match against the North American champion, but it won't come easy. On NXT, Mysterio announced that Lee will have to face 3 other former North American champions to earn a title shot, and must face them all next week. It has since been revealed that Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, and Johnny Gargano will all be part of the high-stakes bout, and Lee will need to be involved in the deciding pinfall or submission. Should Lee overcome the odds, he'll earn a title match against Mysterio for NXT Deadline, but this will hardly come easy for the Cardiac Kid next week. Ever since his release from AEW, there has been speculation as to what CM Punk will do next in wrestling, with some predicting that he'll soon find his way back to WWE. While some believe that he could be returning in Survivor Series, given that the show will be in Chicago, that isn't the case, and don't expect a last-minute change of plans. Sean Ross Sapp has given several reports in the past saying WWE doesn't plan on using Punk this Saturday, and in his latest report, he stated that WWE's stance on this has not changed. CM Punk chants were heard during the Crown Jewel earlier this month and during a recent episode of Monday Night Raw, but that doesn't mean WWE has plans for Punk this Saturday. WWE's official stance is that they are not in talks with Punk, and Punk has told those close to him that he won't be at this week's event, so don't be surprised if he doesn't show up in the All-State Arena. Earlier this month, it was reported that WWE once again has its eye on Kazuchika Okada and hopes to win the New Japan star over with how they're treating current Japanese superstars. Shinsuke Nakamura's push on Raw is, in part, to show Okada that he would be a regular presence on WWE TV if he signed, but when will the New Japan wrestler be a free agent? During Wrestling Observer Radio, Okada's name came up, and Brian Alvarez noted that his New Japan deal is up in February, and he personally believes he won't be going to WWE. While WWE has enough money to offer Okada, New Japan will no doubt work hard to keep him around, and there's always the possibility that AEW tries to make a swing at acquiring him. Ultimately, Okada will be the one to make the decision regarding his future, and whatever he has planned, the wrestling world won't find out until February of next year. During this week's Raw, it was announced that Randy Orton will be returning at Survivor Series to team with Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, and Seth Rollins inside Wargames. When announcing Orton, Cody Rhodes said that the 5th man for his team is someone he has a legacy with, and called them an apex predator before announcing Orton's name. Orton himself didn't appear on the show, but fans have been chanting for him throughout the night, and WWE has wasted no time in bringing out new merchandise for the Viper. WWE has released a new shirt and hoodie for Orton bearing a snake-themed logo with the words "Strike First" and "RKO", which is sure to be a hot commodity now that he's back. WWE made sure to announce Orton before Survivor Series rather than leave his return to the event itself in order to avoid any fans tuning into Survivor Series thinking they'd be seeing CM Punk. This Saturday will mark Orton's first match since May of 2022 and his first time in Wargames, and expect to see plenty of the Viper now that he's finally heading back to the squared circle. Over to NXT as Josh Briggs was motivated in his Iron Survivor Challenge qualifying match with Carmelo Hayes, and it showed in how the 6'8" powerhouse worked. The finish of the match saw Lexis King get involved, which led to Melo jumping right into a clothesline and took an impressive big man moonsault for the loss. Briggs' victory over the former NXT champion is a huge upset, and it has taken far too long for NXT to give Briggs this kind of spotlight, and this was by far his best singles match to date. Melo has been so heavily protected that even a distraction would usually not be enough for him to lose, and it's a statement moment to give Briggs this massive win over Hayes. Now Briggs will go on to the Iron Survivor Challenge match at Deadline, and in what was shaping up to be a predictable field, NXT threw a curveball that will make the match all the more exciting. Briggs will be hungry to prove himself at Deadline, and after his performance this week, he may do just that at next month's event. In the main event of the night, NXT Women's Champion Lyra Valkyria defended against Xia Li, who had gained the early advantage by attacking Valkyria early in the show. This match was initially supposed to be second on the card, but Li laid out the champion during her entrance, raising questions as to whether the match would go ahead. Valkyria refused to have the match postponed to another date and vowed not to lose, and entered the main event by stomping to the ring and demanding the bell to be rung. Despite all this gusto, Valkyria was clearly still hurt, which allowed the challenger to quickly take control. Due to the attack earlier in the night, the Valkyrie was beat down throughout much of this match by Li, and when Li ducked a knockout kick and hit a roundhouse of her own, it seemed the stage was set for a title change. Ultimately though, the champion was able to hit a spin-out Fisherman Buster for the win in one of the most hard-fought and best matches we've seen from either woman. Despite losing, Li once again impressed, and between this match and her match on Raw, she has been having the best matches of her career and proving why she's earned a regular spotlight. This match wasn't at the same level as the Raw match with Becky Lynch, but proved that Li's performance earlier this week was not a fluke and that she has the talents to be a somebody in the women's division. As for Valkyria, she picked up her all-important first title defense and is proving to be a force in NXT that can help elevate women around her, but now she needs a new challenger for Deadline. In a Women's Iron Survivor Challenge qualifier, JC Jane coached up Thea Hale to stay aggressive in her match against Blair Davenport, but Hale entered the match without her usual hype. Jane promised to support Hale without Andre Chase or Duke Hudson, but the Chase U section did not come out in full force to support her as they usually do. Blair Davenport caught her with a short arm knee strike to pick up the win in a match that simply felt underwhelming. Hall and Davenport did not find their chemistry and worked hard but delivered sloppy results, right down to the finishing blow that barely looked impactful. The goal was to show that Hale has not been able to move past the drama surrounding Chase U, and while that story was clear, it was not interesting enough on its own. Speaking of the Chase U scandal, NXT went over Chase U's history connected to the family, and it was announced that Andre Chase will be breaking his silence next week. Up next, we saw Von Wagner have dinner at Mr. Stone's house in an adorable pre-tape, including promising to help Stone's kids with their bullies. When Jimmy Uso betrayed his brother Jay at SummerSlam, it ended one of the greatest tag teams in WWE history, and immediately, talk grew of a match between the two. It was reported at the time that WWE was considering a showdown between the brothers for WrestleMania 40, and that's a match Jey Uso is ready for. Sitting down with Billboard this week, Jay was asked about his dream WrestleMania opponent and said Jimmy is at the top of his list and that it'd be a dream match for him. He added, "When we did the Money in the Bank with Roman and Solo, I was just looking at them getting a little teary-eyed like, look at us. That would go down as the #1 moment in my career if I get to wrestle with Jimmy in the sold-out Philadelphia in front of friends and family. And I'd beat his ass. If I could pick someone else, I'd probably want to run it one time with Seth Rollins for that championship. He's a GOAT, he's a beast, and he got my respect. And he's been holding down Monday Night Raw forever. I'm with it." Jimmy and Jay may be on separate brands right now, but have had some interactions since Jay's move to Raw, including Jimmy costing his brother and Cody Rhodes the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles. At this year's WrestleMania, the Usos were tighter than ever as they headlined Night 1 against Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, but we may be mere months away from a showdown at next year's show. But what do you think? Would you like to see Jimmy versus Jay at WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia? Let us know in the comments below. Now, even though WWE has a brand split, we've seen stars of SmackDown appear on Raw and vice versa, and that will once again be the case when the Blue brand kicks off December. Next Friday, we'll see Smackdown come to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, and there will be plenty of Monday Night Raw talent at the taping. According to local advertisements, fans will see Cody Rhodes face Dominik Mysterio at the show, while World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins will defend against Shinsuke Nakamura. It's unknown whether those matches are going to be on television or if they're just dark matches for the live crowd, as WWE often uses special attraction matches just for the live crowd. Whatever the case may be, the fans in Brooklyn will be getting a stacked show, kicking off an exciting final month of the year for WWE. WWE is always on the hunt for new talent to bring in, and this week, the company reportedly reached an agreement with a former champion of the NWA. PW Insider reports that WWE has signed Maddie Renkowski after she was seen at the Performance Center, and her signing comes just 4 years since she made her pro wrestling debut in 2019. In the years since then, Renkowski has competed for Hurricane Pro Wrestling, Mission Pro Wrestling, SWE, and AEW, and competed for AEW Dark from December 2020 to December 2022. In February of this year, Renkowski and Missa Kate won the NWA Women's Tag Team Championships, titles they'd hold until NWA's 75th anniversary show in August. Renkowski hasn't competed for the NWA since August, and fans will likely be seeing her on WWE programming soon enough, and we'll have to see what's next for the young wrestler. In September, Matt Riddle was released from WWE, and given his prominence on TV shortly before being cut, his exit from the company caught many by surprise. Due to his non-compete clause, Riddle can't wrestle anywhere else just yet, but he can still take bookings for upcoming events, which is exactly what's happened. This week it was announced that Riddle will be competing for MCW at their Winter Blast event in February of next year, and he's not the only notable name being advertised. The NWA's Brian Idol and Natalia Markova are also being advertised, as is ex-WWE star James Ellsworth, and this isn't Riddle's only booking. Riddle will face Rob Van Dam for Big Time Wrestling on March 9th of next year, so while he may be gone from WWE, the former US champion isn't struggling to find work. In 2016, Mandy Rose joined Total Divas for the show's 5th season, joining the likes of Paige, Rosa Mendez, The Bellas, Natalia, and Alicia Fox on the reality show that went into their personal lives. Rose's arrival on the show came less than a year after she joined WWE as part of the 2015 edition of Tough Enough, and the former NXT Women's Champion was not made to feel welcome. On the Power Alphas podcast, Rose recalled being presented to the other cast members as a special surprise by Mark Carano, and the overall consensus was, "Who is this bitch?" Rose remembered that Paige's first response to her was not quite as mean, but rather the future AEW star asked, "But can you wrestle?" And Rose believes many were jealous of her right from the start. After appearing on one season of the show, Rose opted not to return to Total Divas, and while it's been years since she was on the show, it's clear that the show had a lasting impression on the ex-superstar. In recent weeks, Shinsuke Nakamura has been cutting cryptic promos on TV, in which the former NXT champion is directly addressing a particular person that he is waiting for. Nakamura hasn't given any indication about who he is speaking to, leaving fans confused, and it's not just the WWE Universe that have been left in the dark. Talent that Fightful Select spoke to said that they have not been informed as to who Nakamura is talking about, so this storyline is being kept a closely guarded secret backstage. As with seemingly any mystery in wrestling today, some have said that this is leading to CM Punk's return, especially as Nakamura used the GTS during the November 13th edition of Raw. As before, we should stress that there are no talks between WWE and Punk at this time, but whoever Nakamura is waiting for on Raw, it'll be a surprise to the fans and the superstars themselves. Earlier this week, Nick Hogan was arrested and charged with speeding and DUI in the latest run-in with the law for the son of Hulk Hogan. At the time of his arrest, little was known about the circumstances before he got behind the wheel in Florida, but now much more has come to light. Radar Online reports that Nick was hosting a bikini contest at his father's restaurant, Hogan's Hangout, shortly before his DUI in Clearwater, Florida, and footage obtained by TMZ confirms this. In the footage, Nick can be seen behind a DJ booth, playing music and introducing the winners of the bikini contest, in which his father participated as a contest judge. Hulk Hogan also announced that the restaurant was offering complimentary shots, although it remains unclear whether Nick consumed any of the free alcohol provided by his dad. Nick was driving at 51 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour zone and did not reduce his speed when spotted by a member of law enforcement who would eventually pull him over. This isn't Hogan's first run-in with the law, as a car accident he caused resulted in a friend suffering massive brain damage, and we'll keep following his case for any further updates. More from NXT as Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo defeated Edris and Malik Blade on this week's NXT, finishing off their opponents with a double-team gutbuster. The relations have clearly been established as the next challengers for the NXT Tag Team Championships, and we'll have to see if the former Los Lotharios can get the win. Eddie Thorpe was able to defeat Charlie Dempsey this week, despite the second-generation superstar having Drew Gulak and Miles Bourne in his corner. Right after the match, Gulak and Bourne attacked and laid out Thorpe, and Bourne looked very comfortable as a heel next to Gulak. Up next, Baron Corbin delivered a pre-tape promo showing why his life is so much better than Ilya Dragunov, while Ariana Grace promised to make NXT better, starting with Carmen Petrovic. And that was this week's NXT, and what did you think of the show and the build towards Deadline on December 9th? Let us know in the comments. Back to AEW, and Tony Khan is willing to pay big money for acquiring song rights, which we saw with Queen's We Will Rock You at All In and Europe's The Final Countdown at All Out. Billy Starks doesn't have a licensed theme song, but she hopes to change that, as on Twitter, she reached out to Blink-182 with the hope that they'll give her permission to use their track, Aliens Exist. Not only that, but Starks said it would be cool if the band could perform it live for her one time, though her request did not receive a public response from the band. While the outcome regarding Starks' request remains uncertain, we know that Tony Khan has deep pockets, so we can never rule out AEW's president making an offer to the band. In recent months, Starks has been making a name in ROH and serves as a companion to ROH Women's World Champion Athena, and we'll have to see if she ever gets her dream entrance. At Full Gear, Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland competed in an extremely violent Texas death match, which proved to be a hit with fans. On CageMatch.net, the match was voted the highest out of all matches from Full Gear, but Jim Cornette believes the death match may have cost AEW big time. During his Experience podcast, Cornette blasted the match and believes one stunt in particular may have cost AEW a potential network deal. He explained, "Okay, so then Hangman gets a staple gun and staples Swerve's chest. He's stapling him in the titties, not the nipples. That's against the Geneva Convention. And then he gets a format or a piece of paper or whatever, and he staples it to Swerve's arm. Now meanwhile, Brian, you know what a staple gun looks like? You worked in an office. Do you think most of the people know what a staple gun looks like? It's a big metal thing and you squeeze it and it's got this thing that goes across your fingers and you squeeze it and it staples, right? If you're in a fight with a motherfucker, especially if you look like Adam Page and the other motherfucker looks like Swerve Strickland, and you've got a staple gun in your hand, are you gonna staple him in the titty? Or are you gonna draw back and punch him in the bridge of the nose with it? That's the idea. He's got brass knuckles on his hand and he's stapling this motherfucker's arm. And then he stapled his face, and Swerve is letting him do it. And because we know that this is all fake, because of the general overall presentation of AEW, people are sitting here going, well, this stupid motherfucker is letting this other stupid motherfucker staple his cheek and his titties. And at that point, somehow he's busted Swerve open also, and Swerve hit a gusher and starts pouring blood. And this is where Page lays down on his back as Swerve is bending over, bleeding from his head, lays down on his back and opens his mouth so that he can drink Swerve's blood to show how badass he is. And I believe at that point, again, I go back to when Lyndon Johnson said after Cronkite came back from Vietnam, if we've lost Cronkite, we've lost America. I think they might have lost the female audience that they might not have had to begin with on that one. And again, they might have lost the network that they potentially might or might not have had off of that one. You fucking idiot, he's no better than the plumber or the fucking bank-addicted drug robber. He's got more hair, that's it, Paige. Otherwise, he's as stupid and demented and fucking distasteful. While Cornette didn't care for the match, many have praised the bout for providing something truly different and feel that Strickland getting the win was the right call and helps him immensely. Whether you liked the Full Gear match or hated it, the bout was certainly memorable, but this match could cause problems for AEW if Jim Cornette is to be believed. And we're ending with ECW, which earned a cult-like following among wrestling fans before they closed their doors in early 2001. In July of this year, an autobiography of Todd Gordon, who played a pivotal role in ECW, was released, and now another ECW-related project could soon be in the works. According to PW Insider, a possible docuseries on ECW has been shopped around to a number of possible broadcast and streaming outlets, which includes Amazon and Warner Bros. Discovery. There is no word on whether the project has been picked up by any outlets or the extent of development on the series beyond that it has been pitched. News of a potential docuseries comes at an interesting time, as it was this week that Deadline reported that The Rock's 7 Bucks Productions is working on a docuseries on WCW. Both companies reached impressive highs before both went out of business in 2001, and we'll have to see if the ECW series gets picked up by any potential broadcaster.